Hello, once again. It's me again with a short update um, concerning this save file thing. Excuse me. Um, I solved the problem, and so now here is a woo test. It's just hwind and file, and no other parameter required. And the checkbox works. Well, let's first demonstrate that that's true. Okay, so now this happens to be checked. And this is where it's stored in the registry. Typically, there's a dialog subfolder in the registry, and then this should say save here, but I used the wrong name. So, well, I could use the same name really, but for open and close, you see functions are almost identical, and these have the word save in them. But whatever, I'll change that. So I can turn this off. I can save this here, and you can see that's changed to a 0, and the save directory is the same, but it's should be ignored this time, and it'll just take the directory of the file that I'm trying to save, which it does. So that's working. Now here's the interesting bit. How did I do it? You will note that there's no longer any dialog resource in here, so I don't need resource.h. In fact, there's nothing in here. Oops. There's nothing in here. This is all if depth away. And if you look at actually I have to open it this way. Woo test, the executable itself, that has a dialog resource, strangely enough, and that's the version, woo test and everything, and a manifest. You see, somehow I managed to get a dialog resource into the executable, and therefore don't have to create one in memory, because I managed to get it into the executable. And how did I do that? Complete guesswork. Well, nearly guesswork. First off, no, that's not even indicating what we really are. This is the global lib directory where I have all of the various mains, the main for the different builds. And what I did was, in this unit test thing here, after compiling and having it working, it was in here, I suppose, I grabbed the resource that this thing that doesn't have, or it had a dialog resource and a version resource in it. It turns out, maybe I can find something else that compiled recently. Okay. You can take one of these resource files and drop it in here, see? And so you can edit this. So I deleted the version resource. It didn't have an icon or anything. And the dialog resource identifier was a 101, which is the typical first one. So I changed that to a number that nobody would ever use, 1024. And remember, these are all of the resources in this program, right? So all that matters is that if I'm adding a resource to this list, that it doesn't conflict internally with our program. It doesn't matter about the common dialog or anything like that. All that matters is that it be a unique resource in our program. So 1024 is fine. Also, the identifier, I was worried about a conflict before with the open dialog. That also does not. It doesn't matter what number you use for that. And I forgot that I already verified that the window that contains that little checkbox is its own dialog on its own. So even if I used an identifier that was equal to one of the common dialog identifier numbers, that wouldn't conflict because the handle to window would be different. It wouldn't be the handle to window of the parent dialog. It would be destined for my dialog, so there would be no conflict. Hence, nobody needs to know those numbers, and so they're in here in common somewhere hidden. Now what I want to do is somehow link that in. Now what I can do is change. I haven't tested this yet, but I think this should work. I was looking at these various input things. Like there's a thing to link assembly resource, but assembly that means like managed code. These assemblies. Embed managed resource file. That's no good. And I couldn't think of any other place to put it, but to just put it here and see if the linker can handle it. And as you saw, it can. Now the only question that remains, as far as I can tell, it doesn't matter if this was debug or release or anything. That should be identical. It's just it doesn't. There's no code in here. It's just some data. It could be full of icons, for instance. I could make a resource file that has hundreds of icons, and your program can choose from a global list of identifiers an icon. But anyway, so the question is, if I take this, the only remaining question is, can I do that with the auto? Now it's coming from Red. I'm going to try it. Pragma comment lib. I think that's the syntax. And those usually come, I don't know where I usually put them, should be close to the top, right at the top. And I could put it with all the others. Now, what the? See, I was thinking that I could do something like, linker specification. I wonder, well, I should put it with the others, even though it happens to be S save open file and open file name. Open file name I think of as that structure, and for the saved version, whatever. Question is this gonna link and compile? What I do is do a clean and compile. That's in a global directory. I already added it to source save. Oh dear. Oops. Comma. It shouldn't matter, .res, .lib, it's the same. It's a file name. It's arbitrary what you choose for the extension. Now, how does it work? That part, I didn't really even get to in the last video, because I was going to get to all of them. I figured that, well, this method is a lost cause, but since that worked, now it's not only not a lost cause, it's the preferred way, because it's far simpler, and to generate more things there's nothing to it, right? You just make a little unit test program, go to woo test, add another control, take this one and add, you can dump that into here and copy this bit and add that to whatever. Okay, it doesn't like that. Interesting. But it's 60. Oh. Library ignore. I wonder what we got. Oh. But then stop changing the directory on me. Right, didn't work. So it has to be here, but that's okay, that's not a big deal. I don't know why I didn't try it in release mode now. Yes, open function custom. I don't know why, but anyway, all I have to do now is put that into the base, just like I have with the others. The main project I copy everything out of, and just have to add that extra linker option. You'd think it would be, maybe I can say pragma comment res or something. Maybe this has to match that. So now can I look at this? Command line. See, it's just listing it along with the others. It's even right in the middle of, object, resource. Manifest file. And now it works, right? Oh. Gia, what are you doing in the H directory? Now it's there. Okay. How does it work? It's really quite simple. Well, that part now is simple, was simple. So what I've done is basically like you do with a dialog. Have a static function like the dialog proc stub or the win proc stub or any of these stubs that doesn't have a this pointer. And there's a method of getting this pointer into this function when a particular message comes along. And then I have a member function that will get called on for messages pertaining to this particular object. Okay? And here is the value that I'm maintaining. I don't have to put it here. In fact, I could. I don't really need to have a variable here, and I don't really need to have to do what I'm doing, but we might do more in the future, so it's fine the way it is. So there's an extra, everybody gets an extra check, an extra 4 bytes for every reg. I know it's a lot, it's pretty costly, 4 bytes. Now, the problems that come up with this again are the various ways that someone might call this saved file. I might not be handling them all correctly, but if I'm not, I'll fix it. So, parent hwin, the initial file name, filter. Now, default extension is being passed directly on to the function itself, and all that does is, like in Notepad, if you save as, and you just type hello, it won't save the file as hello with no extension. It'll add a .text. So that maybe should come before filtering. Probably more likely to specify this than this. Hard to say. Anyway, if you want to specify that, these all have defaults. No, everything no. In order to get to this one, you would have to say no and then extension. It's not that bad, It's a little easier than their interface. Now, if the file is empty, now I don't know what to do with question marks, so I'm just asserting and returning if I find any question, or trim the file just in case there's spaces. Now I already have a function that validates path strings, and it takes a parameter, another one of those Boolean parameters, whether or not to allow wildcards, defaulting to true, I think. false. Okay, default. Actually, I'm glad that default's false. A valid path string should be something that you can actually open up, right? Now this question that is asking, is it valid? Is it a valid path specifier, assuming we allow wildcards? Now, so the assertion, this is a trick that I use for things that take Boolean arguments. See, this, if this comes up as the message of an assertion, then you've got to go hunting down to find out what this true stands for. If this comes up in the assertion, right, then you know that it's, this is a message to the person who is reading the assert box. Is valid path string with wildcards allowed failed. Just a trick to, okay. So we're allowing the file name to have wildcard. Now, if there's no filter or no extension, you see that the extension is used, either a filter thing is used to find out what kind of files to list, right? Or an extension is used, right? So if there's no filter and there's either there's no file name to go on, or we have a file name but it doesn't have an extension, this extracts. I have three extract functions. It's this, and that. These are based on those batch file things, percent, wiggle, and 0, right? Means or whatever, 1. Means that if it's a path name, so this is the name, and this is name and extension, and this is just extension, including the dot. And that's what these always do. In fact, I have a function called wiggle n0, which just returns name with no extension. Okay, so that means that there's no extension. Now here's one of the major reasons why you might want to use recursion. I use this, for instance, for case handling in TS string in several spots. You see, instead of trying to add things as you go along, like setting defaults and whatever, what happens is you get tied up in all of the various cases and think, whether did I add this, or was that passed in, and so on and so forth, and it becomes difficult to manage. The easier way, I find, is to just call the function again, right? Now, in this case, what I've done is we have nothing, right? 0. So what I want to do is I want to default the file name to star.star, right? And this is the normal all files specifier for a filter, and whatever was already passed in, right? So therefore, now if that works, then I could have passed in this reference here, but I don't like to do that. I like to only leave this untouched unless there's a success. But there's nothing to, in the header that guarantees that this thing that you passed in might get, might have data, some invalid data in it when the false return. I tend to try to not disturb a thing unless there's a success. That's my preference. Now, if there's a success, then I assign that to the original return string and return. So here we are, in that case, coming back in here, and this is file. The stir file is star.star, and the filter is valid. So we end up here, and in fact both of these things are fine. We have both, and we're okay. So that's one case handled. And at this point, either we have a filter, or if we don't have a filter, the file name couldn't be empty. In fact, we know for sure that if there's no filter, if there's no filter, not only is the file name not empty, but it has to have an extension. Because if we had no filter and the file name didn't have an extension, then we would have ended up in this scenario. So if there's no filter, I extract the extension, and I know for sure that there's going to be an extension. And see, I'm asserting that. I'm not returning or anything. That should be guaranteed. Now I'm taking that out as a regular string constant for some reason. Oh, I see. Just to save typing. Now I'm building a filter string using a TS string, which now the TS strings are C strings, so they're all null terminated, right? So it's of no use to take a TS string, right, and have zeros in it, because it's not going to work right. It's going to try and resize itself and so on. So instead, what I've done is I've put carriage returns where I want the zeros to go, and use the formatted string type to fill in this. Whatever the extension is, it's going to be like, say it's any. This is going to say any, right? Files, any file. I thought I had two up. I could have had two up. Oh, here it is, two up. Okay. I put it in uppercase, so it'll say capital INI files, and then bracket star dot capital INI carriage return, and then the specifier for the types of files will be again star dot any. And so that's 3 repeats of the same string, and that's why I took it out here. Okay, now, but I can't modify this. So again, recursion is the answer, right? Because these auto strings, like I can't make an auto string inside of an if clause and have it be valid down here, because it'll clean itself up by that point. But I can certainly call the function again. So now what I do here is I make a copy of that string, using the auto string, which will free it by this point, but it'll never get to this point. It'll free it on this return. And then I walk through I don't want to use any string functions. Well, in fact, I can't, because this is just a regular bare pointer to characters thing. If I see a character return at any index, I set that to 0. So that means that it will be double null terminated. And so now I have a filter, and the file I know is valid, whatever it was, and I call the function again. Okay, so either, if either of these cases occur, eventually we're going to end up here, and this should say save. And at this point, we have a filter and we have a file name. Okay. Now, one thing I'm not doing, and I probably should. No, not yet. I'm going to take the directory out of the file name. Now, here's just the same code that I had in woo test, but I create a new registry object for this particular dialog, and I use the title of the dialog. So the next time I run it, it's not going to be open here. It's going to say save, and now get, and I try to find out if we're supposed to remember the last saved directory, and that defaults to 0 initially, but still, yeah. So that, and the first time through here, this will default to 0, and we won't get inside here. But the user of the dialog might click the checkbox, and this might not be the first time in which case this could be true, and therefore we want to see what the last directory, save directory was, and we get that out of the registry, same key. And so if we do manage to get that out and it's not empty, and if it happens to be a directory, it might be invalid. If it's a valid directory and all those things are true, and got it and it's valid, then I take the file, passed in file name, and just take out the file and extension and replace its directory name with the one from the registry. Now the logic from this point on would be the logic that you would use if you were using the file name only as the way to determine the directory, starting the save directory. No more cases at this point. Now here I'm saving off. It turns out that this function can alter and does alter the current directory. Okay, but I don't want it to do that, so I'm saving it off. And now this is a little bit. Actually, I'm changing the current directory. Okay, I'm setting the current directory to this value. No, I'm doing maybe too much on one line here. Let me read it this way. First, The file name, whatever it is being set equal to what this function returns, and this if this is a relative path, that makes this function turns it into a full path. If it's already a full path, it does nothing. So now stir file, the thing passed in is now a full path, and now I'm extracting the directory from it. It seems like I'm adding something and then taking it away. And in a sense, it's true. But if this was passed in, and then none of that other stuff above happened, and this was, let's say, just Alan.ini, okay? So imagine that its stir file is Alan.ini. This would change Alan.ini into the full path of Alan.ini from the current directory. This uses the current directory if nothing else is known. And now I'm getting that directory out, and so this actually would return the current directory and have no effect. However, if this was like a bat something, then this assignment, well, it'll add drive letters and stuff too. It might be /bat, and if I'm on the C drive, then that would turn it into C's bat. Anyway, in every possible case, the result of making this function call is to fully qualify stir file and make sure that the current directory is in the same directory as this destination being asked for. Okay, now so I'll copy that into a buffer, 4 times magpath, hwin, filter is given, title is given, default extension may or may not be given. H instance, since we're using a hook thing, has to be specified. These are the flags that we need. No recent Explorer type, template version, enable hook. I returned that dialog resource into a string template. Set the hook function to that. And for this custom data, I'm passing the address of this other registry object for the particular dialog. And I call the function. In the stub on WM init dialog, according to the help, the open file name structure that was used to create the dialog, whatever it is in question, is passed in lparam. And I've set the custom data part of that to be something of type reg star. So this here, this is that R dialog. Now I'm setting that into the user data area of the system user data area for the class, for the object. And all the time, when I get to this line, I try to extract something from there. This is just like TS dialog. And whatever's in the user data area for dialogues, if it's not null, then it's going to be what I set it to, which is an object of this type, which is a dialog. So therefore it has this function, and I can call it. And finally, when we get here, not using anything fancy, on init dialog, I'm getting this string value. Remember that if we this actually, I know I don't have to do a get set because it will have been done already. Then on here, remember last saved. I should turn that in. I'll turn that into a define a const string or something. So that it sets the initial value of the checkbox. That's all it does. And then on destroy, I'm just setting this variable, just as with woo test, to the value of whatever the checkbox had. And that's it. In the end, if the result of the operation was a success, I store the result into the thing of the string passed in, and I save those values into the registry for the dialog and return true. Otherwise there's an error. And that's the end of it. And that's the end of using this. That's it forever. You'll never have to worry about that function again. This handles every case. I guess I'm not using that. I was going to use the I should probably stir file PC file name. Yeah, I'm using method 1. Well, actually, method 1 is just as specific as method 2. I think there was no special case for method 1, was there? Let's make sure. I'm just thinking about this. Contains a path. That path is the initial directory. Otherwise, initial dir. I'm not sure what they mean by contains a path, but this might contain. I may have to change this and extract the directory out. Well, where's my okay? Let's just make sure before I go. What happens if I say star here? Is it gonna go to C bad? Or is it going to go to something else? Okay. Let me try this. The temp. Let's see if it should go to D temp this time. That is. Okay. So it considers that to be a path, and it ignored. It didn't put that in there, did it? See, store that back. It did. Actually, that's nice. That's good. And it's only got one selection because I didn't specify a filter. And I'm not saving off. Also, I'm saving off the filter selection, which I need to do that extra little bit. But there's nothing to it. Okay.